Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and a warm welcome to everyone. My name is Katherine Marshall. I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. I'm a senior fellow at the Berkley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs at Georgetown University. And today we are very pleased to host a special event, an intergenerational conversation with young women who are inspired by religious faith, who will share highlights of their work as they respond to the COVID-19 emergency in their communities. This is what we would consider an evergreen event that's always relevant, but it also reflects a very timely issue. The event today reflects a very special partnership that developed when staff at UN Women approached us with the germ of an idea. The partnership also includes the World YWCA, the Anglican Communion, the Baha'i International Community, the Milstein Center for Interreligious Dialogue at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and the Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities. Thank you to all for making this possible. Some quick housekeeping details before I introduce our speakers and the plans for our 1-hour event. First, information about the speakers is on the website, so our introductions will be brief. Second, please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the events page on the Berkley Center's website within the next few days. If you registered for today's event, you will also receive an email with the video when it becomes available. And third, please submit any questions you may have by opening the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Type in your question. We will bring your questions as far as we can into the discussion. But before we get into the discussion itself, we have a very special performance to start us off from Jamie Medicine Crane, a young Blackfoot woman from the Kainai and Piikani Nation in Alberta. Jamie is an activist, an educator, and a multidisciplinary artist who's been involved with the YWCA for over 20 years and is currently focused on education, and particularly Indigenous education, as a curriculum developer with Norquest College. Today, she will share with us a musical interpretation of the COVID crisis. Lopa Banerjee, Director of the Civil Society Division at UN Women and Executive Coordinator of the Generation Equality Forum, will then frame the discussion, putting the important issues and complexities that underlie today's discussion in context. Next will come a panel discussion moderated by my colleague at the Berkley Center, Ruth Gopin, and me. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Executive Director of UN Women, will lead off. She brings her perspective as someone with decades of experience as a female leader. We're both among the elders here, and as a lifelong advocate for education, women's empowerment, and gender equality. Phumzile is a true activist, always highlighting the shadow pandemic of violence against women and girls during this COVID pandemic, as well as amplifying the voices of women at the front line of the crisis, including female healthcare workers, women and girls who make up the majority of the refugee population. Many of who contribute to and are inspired from their faith traditions. She's joined by Naomi Woyengu, who speaks to us from her home in Papua New Guinea. Naomi is currently the regional coordinator for the Young Women's Leadership Program in Asia and Pacific for World YWCA. Martine Dushime is a youth leader for the Anglican Church of Burundi and a fifth-year medical student at the University of Burundi. And Talia Kaplan is an educator studying for rabbinic ordination at the Jewish Theological Seminary. Talia also serves as the program director of Just City, which focuses on the intersections of Judaism and social justice. So we look forward to hearing all of these different perspectives from young and less young who are gathered on this webinar. And with that, I will turn to Jamie to start us off with her performance.
Hello, all my relations. My name is Jamie Medicine Crane. My traditional name is Brave Woman, and it's such an honor to be here with all of you. I come to you from, today I am in BC, British Columbia in Canada, and I'm by the Penticton Indian First Nations band here. It's such an honor to be here with all of you and to share with you in such an important time, what we're all facing around the globe. I think that this is really an amazing webinar to be a part of, because there's so many women and girls around the world and men that are facing so much. In the time that I've seen a lot of people with mental issues happening. I've seen a lot of violence happening here in Canada. The murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls are still a big epidemic that has been happening here since the beginning of contact with the Indigenous people. So for me, faith has always brought me in my journey and has helped me to heal, but also to help others heal. And with that, my music that I'm going to be sharing with you is a part of that. I'll be playing a cedar flute, and it comes from a cedar tree, and it's such a strong instrument, because it has so many spirits when you play different flutes. And when I play my flutes, I always think about like my ancestors that walked this earth before me, and all those ancestors around the globe that have gone through so much, and faith has gotten them through so much and has helped them to continue on their journey and bring so much resilience to them as well. Faith is such a beautiful thing, because it gives us that belief that we could continue to keep going. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, like right now with the whole COVID-19 crisis. So many people are being faced with so much. And the beautiful thing is that young women around the globe are leading many powerful ways of healing, and also to bring faith to others. So I'm going to share with you today an honor song to honor Mother Earth, to honor all of the beings on Mother Earth, the animals, the land, the plants, but also all of us. And we come from all four directions. And the beautiful thing is that we come from so many cultures around the globe, and so many beliefs, and that's what makes it so beautiful, because we're all so strong. And when we all believe, it brings us forward in our journey wherever we're going. And so I'm going to play an honor song for you all, and I'm going to dedicate this to all of you, to all the young women that are facing so much in the globe. And I send this healing out to you. This is like I mentioned, a cedar flute, and it's a drone flute, so there's two barrels on it that harmonize with each other. And it's such an honor to be able to be asked to play my flute for such an amazing event that we're going to be sharing today. So I thank you so much to all the organizers for inviting me. I thank you, I thank Creator for bringing us all together and to giving us that faith to continue in our journey in a positive way, to strengthen for all future generations to come and ourselves as well. Thank you so much, and I send you all blessings and prayers to all of you around the globe, and I send you love and healing in this journey and in this crazy time that we're going through, but I know that we'll all get through it with the faith that you all have. Sending you love. Itzigakumem.
Thank you so much for that, Jamie. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Katherine. Thank you to the Berkley Center and to everybody who has made this conversation possible. Thank you very much for inviting UN Women to this conversation. I am going to start by quoting a few lines from a poem that was written some years ago, but is actually truer of this time than ever before. I held an atlas in my lap, ran my fingers across the whole world and whispered, "Where does it hurt?" It answered, "Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere." And so here we are in this moment of pain everywhere that everybody is feeling. But we are here to talk about the strength, resilience, and leadership of young women at a time when bold action, solidarity, and cooperation is what will see us through this cataclysm. But it is faith and hope and the belief that we need to work on this together that will help us to emerge into a world that is equal, just, and most of all, sustainable. so we are here to have this conversation among all of you at a time when we are in a climate where the calls, the demands for racial justice have been insistent, together with the demands for justice and equality overall. Because what the crisis has done is that it has highlighted the deep systemic inequality in the world. What the crisis has also done is that it has highlighted the phenomenal leadership of women and as the frontline responders for this crisis. Women have been frontline responders as healthcare workers, as primary caregivers, and so much more. And yet their place at the decision-making table in terms of developing sustainable responses to the pandemic is not secured and is not central. And that is what we are here to talk about. In particular, it is really important to recognize the role that young women of faith are playing in responding to the COVID crisis. Faith is an important aspect of the lives of the majority of young women and girls' identity across the world, shaping their economic, political, and social life, as well as the way in which they interact with their communities, their family, their friends, their peers, and so much more. And young women of faith are responding to the crisis in the world at this time as frontline responders, as health professionals, community volunteers, transport and logistics managers, vaccine developers, scientists, and so very much more. And at the same time, delivering care and services to their families and communities around the world. And yet they remain untapped and unheard as a constituency when responses to the crisis are being designed. And this is true even within the responses of faith organizations that are right now engaged in delivering life-saving humanitarian services to all of those who are affected by this crisis. Faith organizations are large actors in building support systems that are sustainable in communities before and after a pandemic. But yet, even within these faith communities and faith institutions, the leadership of young women of faith is silent and absent, even though they are leaders in their communities. And so amplifying the potential of young women of faith to bring transformative change to communities and highlighting forceful examples of their transformative leadership must be a key part of the work as we go forward. And as communities turn to faith leaders and actors for hope and healing from this pain. And so we will hear from you and your lived realities of leadership, challenges, and what you seek, both in communities of solidarity and to understand from shared leaders to go forward to create this brave new world that we must birth now. And so in order to do that, I'm going to turn this over to you to continue the conversation. Thank you so much. And we are going to have a really exciting conversation. Over to you.
I'm so grateful to be here with all of you and to be kicking off this conversation. My name is Ruth, and I'm the Events and Projects Manager at the Berkley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, a colleague of Katherine's, who I've learned so much from. And I think that that really encapsulates what this is about. It's about learning from one another. It's about me as a young person of faith, learning from Katherine, who's had so many years of experience in this space, and now to open up the conversation to more voices from both someone who has been in this space for many years, who's lived it every day, who was a young leader of a young leader herself for many years, and is now in many positions of leadership and is wearing many hats during this crisis and has been so active. So I hope that it's obvious that I'm talking about you, Phumzile, the Executive Director of UN Women. I'm so excited to hear from you as a woman who's wearing so many different hats on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19. And I think, as Lopa mentioned, it's so critical to start with major obstacles and structural barriers. We want to get to some positive stories of hope as well, but we don't want to pretend like this is an easy thing. So please, if you would share some of your experiences over the past few months and some of the obstacles that you faced.
Express my appreciation for having this opportunity to be part of an intergenerational and interfaith discussion. I guess we could say that at times like this, faith is most important and is probably one of the key coping mechanisms when you really feel your own talent, ability to control your space and everything else is just not in your hands. You do what you need to do, what you can, but you also leave some of it to a power that is greater than you. Coming together as people of different ages and faith, I dare say that we are also connected in that space, even though we are not together. It is just one of those times when you can be apart but together, and this is something that faith enables in all our lives. But this should also be a time when you are a person of faith, you should not be comfortable. This is almost your responsibility. The last few months have been difficult for many people, many of them not with us in this platform. And the ability to feel with them and to take action of whatever sort is very, very critical. People have been hungry. So for every meal we eat, there's almost a need for us to think about those who do not have. And therefore, know that in your work, there's almost a responsibility to address this deprivation that exists for so many people. You may not be able to feed many people and be everywhere, but you have got to figure out how, because of your faith, you could be fulfilled because you've made a move. I think for most of us also here, because of our work and our beliefs, the issue of gender-based violence has been very much high on our agenda. Battling the health pandemic and battling the shadow pandemic of violence against women. Again, individually and collectively, an area where we actually have to feel we are making a concrete difference. We are going to live for a long time with so much grief. Because I think one thing that we have not spoken about, and this is maybe, because I think many people are going to say some of the things that are critical that we are speaking about a lot and trying to figure out what to do. But I think the one area that I haven't had a lot of time to talk about is the grief that is out there. Losing so many people in such a short space of time, something that nobody was not prepared for. People dying alone is a recipe for amazing grief, mental health issues, depression, and etc. And really what I would like for us to think about, and some of us, I'm sure in this group, we have lost people, and so we have also our own grief to contend with. But my main message today in this session is to say, can we figure out the ministry of consoling those who are in grief at this time, who because of the grief that they may be feeling will not be able to function fully and to move on. And the illnesses that come with depression and grief, which may affect not just the person who has those feelings, but the people in the family, at work, and wherever you are operating. I don't know the answer I have to say, but I also just want to put this on the table. In this time also of so much connection that is virtually, how can we address and use this space not to talk sometimes about some of the important things that we talk about, which are substantive, which are policy, which are programmatic, just to talk about caring for people because of the hurts they are feeling. So I would just like to leave it there and hope that somewhere along our discussion, we can find a way, or even outside this, to figure out how are we going to contend, and the resilience of young people that we have here can also be a very strong platform, but also the lived experience of people who are in this discussion, who have had more time in this earth, can also be powerful. So a combination of the two could give us a nexus to learn to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really important to hear, and I really appreciated being able to hear it. I think what you brought up about considering grief and the impact that that's had on all of us is really powerful, but also the idea of making a move, and making a move perhaps motivated by faith as a way to move forward. And so now I want to turn it to a few young women who have been making moves in their communities and who have been in positions of leadership during this time, and hear from them how they've been confronting that and confronting the obstacle of grief and the many other obstacles that we're dealing with at this time. So Naomi, I think I'll start with you, if that's okay, and just ask you to explain the work that you're doing right now and the role that you've played and the obstacles that you've encountered.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for the question. And it's such an honor to share this platform alongside Madame Phumzile and the other young women as well. So in response to the question that you just asked, so basically it has been a difficult time for many. And from my side of the world here in the Pacific, the impact of COVID-19 hasn't been that extreme to some other parts of the world. However, we've also had experiences of the nationwide lockdowns, and that really did affect the way my role as a young woman leader in my community played out as well. So with the restrictions placed on movement and social interactions and personal connections with people, most of the things that I did during this time was really basically online. And it came to a point where I had young women that I work with in my country that were reaching out to me during the time that we were in the lockdown, and they were going through situations or experiences of gender-based violence or intimate partner violence within their homes. But because of the lockdown, I had limited ways of helping them. I could only reach through them online or through communication, but that was very limited. And I felt miserable and hopeless in my role and in my capacity as a young woman that is an activist and an advocate for young women's leadership in this space. And in that process also at the time, I offered so many help with other young women in the region that I work with in terms of providing encouragement and counseling and advice for them, because a lot of them really needed that. A lot of them were suffering in terms of their mental health and were reaching out and needed to be heard. So in doing so, I opened myself up to listening to a lot of young women. But along the way, I also forgot to take care of my own personal mental health. And it came to a point where, I couldn't help the young woman in my country in her intimate partner violence situation, I felt hopeless and I felt miserable, and it affected me greatly. And the way that I work also, it affected me. So I had to take a step back and to renew and re-energize my own faith, my own capacity to then be able to help those other young women that need my help. So that was my obstacle that I experienced during the time, and that was the role that I played. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you for sharing that personal experience. And I think that is a very good reminder also of how much we're all confronting this in our own personal capacities as well, and grappling with that grief that Phumzile mentioned, not only on a global scale, but also on a very, very personal scale and a very interpersonal scale. I will turn now to Talia, who's sitting also in the United States, and ask her, as someone who is here in the United States, where I'm also based, we've been experiencing, and this has resonated out globally as well, but really started in Minnesota with the murder of George Floyd, the calls for racial justice that we've been hearing, and the intersection of those protests with the pandemic that is still ongoing. And I want to ask you how your work as a Jewish educator and organizer is informing your approach to confronting these intersecting crises that we're seeing here in the United States.
Thanks, Ruth. And I would just echo that it's so great and humbling to be here with so many voices from around the world of different generations and different faiths. I think this is a really painful time for many reasons, as been said. And I think for those of us who care deeply about human dignity, it's an affront to human dignity to see Black lives devalued by our government, by the people who are supposed to be keeping us safe. And this is definitely on my heart and mind, and on the heart and minds of many people in the Jewish community. After all, we know that there are Jews of color, and Black Jews face the obstacles that all members of the Jewish community are facing, but they also are experiencing the pain and the grief and the discrimination that comes from police brutality. So as a young female white Jewish leader, I'm thinking about how I can help my community uplift certain voices and shape the broader conversation and the broader decisions in our country that are trying to respond to the systemic racial injustice. So one thing that many of us, myself included, have been involved in is mobilizing interfaith coalitions to affect the allocation of resources. So my home congregation in Washington, D.C., Addis Israel, is part of an interfaith network, and my work is very relational as an organizer. So I was making calls to other congregants, hearing what was coming up for people, and connecting people to an action this Thursday night where not just over 100 members from our synagogue, but also members from churches and mosques and other faith communities in Washington, D.C. will be coming together in an interfaith forum with a group called WIN to try to divert resources from militarized police forces and bring them towards social services to address some of the disparities that we're seeing as a result of this pandemic, but as was mentioned, disparities that existed before the pandemic. So I think it's really about increasing people's empathy so that they're able to work together as a community and with other communities to hold our government accountable to responding to those systemic issues.
Thank you. I'm honestly very personally interested in getting more involved with that. I know Honest Israel well. I also am based here in Washington, D.C., so we can connect afterwards and move forward. And I think that's what this is all about, right? It's about making connections with other young women of faith and hearing what they're up to and getting involved and learning and sharing and growing together. I'll ask one more question to our final panelist, Martine. And then I also want to remind everyone to start submitting your own questions to the Q&A box, and we'll integrate those as we open up the conversation. But first, Martine, you're living and working in Burundi as a youth leader in your church, and you are also a medical student, so you're about to enter the front lines of this pandemic. So how are you sitting with all of that, and how is your society perceiving and treating COVID-19 patients or suspected cases? What have you been seeing around that in your own community?
Thank you for the question, and I'm so happy to be on this panel and learn from all of you. About that question, how does society treat or the confirmed cases of COVID-19? Let me answer this by sharing the story of one of my relatives. One day when she was at work, she coughed and her boss immediately concluded that maybe she's a COVID-19 confirmed cases, regardless of other symptoms she had. And she went to the hospital and came reassured that she's not a case of COVID-19. But her colleagues didn't believe her. They even went on checking the drugs she got from the doctor. I remember that person said to me, I have experienced much stigma in the way that even the life at work became normal days after, I think 2 or 3 days after. So people are desperate because this disease has no treatment, approved treatment. All countries are trying this and that, and people are so desperate so that they try to do what they can to prevent themselves. So I was asking myself, what if we treat people with love and compassion, those patients or suspicious cases? Yes, I have to say that they have to be isolated, but what if we do this with love and compassion? What if we ask, if I was in their place, how would I want people to treat me?
These are remarkable stories, and I think from all the four that we've heard, plus Lopa, we get this sense that I think we all feel of grief, worry, anxiety, but at the same time, the sense, a compelling urgency to do something about it. So this sort of personal helplessness of being trapped, but seeing, I think for Phumzile and Lopa and myself, so many of these issues are not new. They've been around for so long, and yet they still seem to come back again in fresh forms. And yet we hear, and I think we genuinely believe that this is a time to reimagine, to rethink, to reopen, to look at with fresh eyes at what's coming. So I think that's something I'd be interested in your advice to us, particularly I think to UN Women, but also to the institutions we recommend. What should we be doing apart from getting out of the way? Do you have specific asks? Do you have specific priorities, urgent priorities? Is it the discrimination issue? Is it the violence issue? We look very much to you for hope, but also for direction as to what may not have worked and what are the new opportunities, the fresh opportunities that we're seeing in this really very remarkable time, a time that we sometimes call a kairos moment, which is this very special time of grace and opportunity, one where things that were impossible may be possible. So who would, I could ask Phila that if she has any particular sort of thoughts on what's the new agenda, as well as the one that we've carried with us. But also, I think we really want to hear your advice and your ideas.
If I can say something, just on the issue of violence against women, and on a very practical basis, to the extent that we still have situations where the resources and the help that women need when they experience violence are not accessible because of the restrictions that come with the measures meant to limit transmission. We have to be vocal wherever you are, vocal in speaking to your policymakers, whoever else is an ally, that these services need to be essential, declared essential services, and accessible all the time. There never was a time when we needed to make that point. Many countries have come out and admitted that the violence has been very much increased at this time. So leverage the time when countries are actually admitting that there's a problem and say, you therefore cannot take these services. You cannot move the resources for shelters in order to provide resources for isolating COVID-19 question. But let us also make sure that these resources remain essential services beyond COVID. So that is a building back together. That is creating a new normal out of this situation, making sure that you institutionalize the accessibility of resources that are needed by women. And these are from shelters to hotlines that work, and to counseling and other services that women need at this time. So that I don't take time, I'll just raise 2 points. The second is that countries are providing stimulus, fiscal stimulus, to respond to the financial crisis that women and people in general are experiencing. Be vigilant about the applicability of those interventions to women. Track the stimulus package of your country and see if it reaches women in the informal sector, women who are running family-owned businesses and therefore are sole proprietor, which tend not to be the ones that are targeted by these stimulus. Write about it, talk about it, tell UN women in your community to stand with you, because we are constantly engaging with governments about ensuring that women are not left without these benefits, because we know that this means that the crisis for these women will last much longer, even after the crisis is over. Thank you.
And if I may just add one more point to the points that the executive director just made, which is to do with the issue of both fake news, addressing fake news, and to the issue that Martine raised about addressing stigma. And these are both related. So in the, faith actors are there in the communities. They are people of trust. So their role in ensuring that accurate information is disseminated widely to all parts of the community their role in doing this is crucial. And the role of young women of faith as members of those institutions, but also as members in their communities, and being people of, again, people that the communities trust. So they are credible voices who will be heard in terms of countering the disinformation that is out there. That is one. And then the second point is the issue of addressing stigma. Both the stigma that patients who are suffering from COVID feel, but also the stigma that frontline healthcare workers are experiencing. We have heard stories about nurses not being welcomed back into their communities because they are seen as carriers of the disease, when in fact they are performing these services that are so essential for the survival of their communities. So again, the role of faith institutions that are there offering humanitarian services to take on this leadership role of countering stigma and using and working with the young women leaders in their institutions, young women of faith who are leaders in their institutions as role models and icons and as voices to counter that stigma. Over.
I think you're hearing some very strong echoes of the themes that you came up with. And I think we're very conscious that faith is very personal as a motivator, but it's also a huge institutional structure with a capacity to do the things that I think the shared views. But I want to hand back to Ruth to guide us through perhaps getting some challenges and some advice to your elders and sort of paths for the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'll also maybe integrate some of the questions that we're starting to see come in. And I've seen a couple of questions about everyday relationships and partnerships that are needed in order to reimagine and move forward in these spaces. There have also been some questions about barriers to progress on gender justice, particularly during this time. So I want to open it up to my fellow colleagues of the younger generation, both to, as Katherine said, give some challenges in response to some of the things that we've just heard. And also, if you'd like to answer some of these questions about the barriers and challenges around gender justice and around partnerships and what types of partnerships are needed during this time. Talia, would you like to start?
Thanks. I'd actually like to address two things. I'll first speak to the partnership piece. And then I want to go back to something really important that Lopa said about the role of faith leaders in responding to misinformation, because I think that's a really important thing that she hit on. So first, in terms of the partnership piece, and I see the really amazing questions in the chat about the DC community. I want to share something that I think is relevant for all of us, no matter what community that we're in. It feels really important to me as a community organizer to be proximate to the people most directly impacted and to be building relationships with organizations in our community. So right now I'm based in New York City, and though I stay involved in my beloved DC community, it's been very important for me to get to know Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, which is an organization on the ground here. And something that they think a lot about is coalition building. So I would encourage young people and people of any age on this call to find out which organizations are doing the work in your immediate community. And when thinking about coalition building, it's really important to know that you don't have to agree with every person in every group and every coalition about every issue. What's important is to come together around common goals and to move those goals forward. Similarly, in thinking about how we come together and what Lopa raised about misinformation and the role of faith leaders, I think there's been a real void in leadership in America in terms of how our government is responding. They're actively telling people things that will put them in harm's way. And many faith leaders have said, because we value the dignity of every human being, because we value life, life is incredibly important in the Jewish tradition, we are going to urge our members to take the necessary precautions, like wearing masks, like not avoiding gathering, but avoiding gathering in person. We've seen amazing resilience in how communities have been coming together online. And also how communities have been keeping each other safe. JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary, worked with a church in Harlem called St. Matthew's to make sure that everyone who needed to got COVID testing. So I think that faith leaders are really filling a vacuum that we're seeing in leadership in this country and affirming the dignity in every human being when they say there are real health concerns that come with a global pandemic. And we encourage our community to support one another, not by physical in-person gatherings, but by taking necessary health precautions and by finding innovative ways to gather, as we've been discussing through technology.
Thanks. Naomi, I saw you nodding along. Do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you so much, Ruth. And yeah, I echo the same sentiments as shared by Natalia. And I just wanted to add that faith is one of the biggest driver in the leadership for many young women and women in various parts of the world. And I think in terms of, in response to the question around partnership, through working with faith, it teaches us that it shows us our own capacities, and it teaches us that there is strength in collective efforts, and with collective work we get things done together. And if we pay attention to the opportunity that is at hand with COVID-19 pandemic, it has laid the groundwork for closer public service partnerships between local governments and faith communities in the future, as an enhanced appreciation by the congregants for the social justice role of their faith traditions ask them to enhance. So that's basically what I had to add to Talia. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you. And then I'll ask Martine also if you'd like to come in and respond to some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat, and also to some of the things that have been shared by your fellow panelists.
Okay, thank you. Let me talk about partnership needed in this time. I think the organization acting locally with common goals can come together and do capacity building, and when they can lean on their successes and learn from their mistakes and failures so that they can make impact on a large scale on the community. But I want to call upon the youth. Many times we make excuses as like we are not part of any organization, we can't take action, we can't do anything without resources and so on. But let me share this quote from Napoleon Hill, which guided me through this journey of bringing change in my community. He said, if you cannot do great things, you can do small things in a great way. So no matter the resources you have, no matter if you are part of an organization or not, you can do something, you can bring change, you can act in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. And that actually is a really great segue into the last question that I was going to open up to anyone of the panelists who would like to respond to it, which is maybe a multi-part question again about how we can, what are the encouraging signs in faith spaces right now to move forward on gender equality, and particularly how in this moment, how can this moment be a catalyst for young women of faith and for women more broadly, for people of faith more broadly, to transform traditional definitions of leadership and leadership roles? And what are you doing to contribute to that? And what can all of us who are watching and participating in this conversation do to help move that forward? So if each of you in turn, each of our wonderful panelists want to give a short response, and then I'll wrap things up. Any volunteers to go first? Phumzile, are you still there, and would you be able to?
Yeah,
start us off? Thank you.
My message is for young women who are aspiring to be leaders and women of faith. Be true to your conscience when you lead. And this pandemic has just become controversial as well, since there are so many people from the US in this call, where helping people to survive and keep each other safe is a choice about politics, which has nothing to do with keeping people safe. If you are a leader, it's always going to be important to follow your convictions. And you cannot always do, if you're part of a party, follow the dictates of a party. Do what is right. If you have to differ, so be it. Because leadership is not a popularity contest. It is about being loyal to your principles and choosing to do the right thing, sometimes even if there's consequence to yourself. I think this is a really big lesson to learn from here. Hold on to that lesson because you will need it at different times in your life in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Naomi, did you have a couple of closing words?
Thank you, Ruth. And I would just like to say, and just adding on to what Madam Phumzile has mentioned about leadership is not a popularity contest. And at this time, there's so many people doing so many things and looking at what traditional leadership looks like and what young women of faith and leadership looks like. There's two different leadership styles, I would say. In the traditional leadership, we're told to be strong, to be aggressive, and to be bold. And these are more so traits where you find it very different in a young woman of faith, where you see someone who's compassionate, someone who has empathy, someone who can connect well with people and provide that space of inclusivity for those that are in need of that. And I think that's something that as young women, and I'm grateful for the reminder that Madam Phumzile has given to us, and as young women, we have to continue reminding ourselves of that. And I also, in terms of encouraging other young women and women of faith and the work that we do, the only way we can get others on board is to continue sharing our stories, because this is the powerful tool that we can use, and that is our stories of our faith working in our leadership. So sharing those stories, it can help us to inspire others and also emit change around us that we want to see. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. I don't want to cut out any last words of Talia or Martine though. So if either of you have anything to contribute, please feel free. Otherwise, we are already 2 minutes over, and I think we've had some really wonderful contributions and advice about how we're all grappling with this time. I want to thank again all of our speakers and all of our partners. Talia or Martine, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, about leadership, I will not go far from what others panelists said. Leadership is not about position, and let me say it's about the capacity of influencing others and be an effective role model. And I want to conclude with this sentence, which is very common in my country, where they say, listen to what I say, but don't look to what I do. And I want to, if we may cancel this from our thought and said, look at what I do, and so that you can be inspired with that.
I'll just quickly say, growing up, the idea of becoming a rabbi never crossed my mind because I didn't see rabbis who looked like me. And when I was in my early 20s, I finally considered the idea and said maybe to it. And when I came to JTS, I met with someone named Margot Hughes Robinson and many other female rabbinical school students, and I saw myself. And so when people talk about stories, when my co-panelists talk about women's voices, they really do matter. And I see male allies here who have done the work of lifting up those female voices. So I would just encourage everyone to be in relationship, to not be afraid to speak up, and most importantly, to lift other voices up as well.
That's wonderful. I think that's a resounding call to all of us to move forward and to keep sharing our stories and keep doing the work and lifting up the work of our fellow women who are doing this amazing work during this time and always. So thank you again. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all of the partners who helped make this happen. And have a good rest of your day or the rest of your evening, depending on where in the world you are located and where you're tuning in from. Thank you.